Yo, what is up YouTube? James Baek here, and welcome back to another episode of Back to Basics, a VGC Improvement Series. I know it's been a couple of months since the previous one, about the first one actually, the team building guide, but I do get this question a lot and I decided finally to make a video about this. It's been a video I've actually been working on for quite a bit, but I wasn't exactly sure how much in detail I really wanted to go, but I always thought that there was more into this, and I feel like there is probably more in depth, but there are only really two perspectives on how you can really approach team preview, and maybe some combinations, but basically there's only two general ones, so it isn't like a super big topic that I could carry about. But I thought I would go into detail about how I approach team preview because I keep getting this question a lot. And so yeah, this video is here to help you explain the thought process behind how I normally pick my team leads, as well as the Pokemon I bring in the back during team preview, how I approach it, and what goes behind the mindset of me when I look at a team for the first time. So let's get straight into it. So why is team preview important? Well, team preview is the start of the game. The game doesn't start on turn one when the battle starts. The battle actually begins at the team preview, where you get to pick your options. You and the opponent can only bring 4 out of the 6 Pokemon from each of your teams in VGC, which means you have to pick the front 2 as the lead and then the back 2 of what you have to try and cover for the foundations of the entire opposing 6 that you each have. Team preview allows you to visualize how the battles will go, and this is something really important. When I look at team preview, it's something that I always try to happen is going to be visualizing the battle of what can possibly go happen. Like, I try to imagine the possibilities that could go on throughout the battle, what kind of Dynamax situations that could happen, etc. Because it is a really important thing, especially in high level Pokemon, to be able to understand this and be able to look ahead in future games. Because just like in the game of chess, where you are able to visualize how the board will potentially occur in a couple of turns, you got to outpredict your opponent, especially in a high level chess game. Just like in a high level chess game, a high level Pokemon game, team preview allows you to figure out how the game is going to go and how you should approach it. You can assess your win conditions in team preview, which is extremely important because it kind of figures out how you want to approach the game and how you want to play. This usually decides how you will bring your Pokemon from lead to the Pokemon in the back and what you want to try to lead up to for the game, so you can be able to plan that accordingly. It can create huge advantages or disadvantages immediately, especially because leads are very important in 2020 with Dynamax, because there are so many situations in the game where if you lead incorrectly and they are able to put on a lot of pressure, you could just fall behind immensely, and not bringing the right Pokemon can put you just at a huge disadvantage during the game if you don't have the right tools. If you brought something a bit too weak to one Pokemon, for instance, or one combination, it could really just put you on the back foot and could just make you lose the game straight out, even before you start from turn 1. So there are only 2 different ways to really approach team preview. I thought there was potentially more, but realistically you could just simplify it into 2 general approaches, which is going to be, one is the standard general approach, which is going to be your perspective, and then the opposing perspective approach. You try to put yourself in your opponent's perspective of what they would bring against you, and then you would plan and counter that accordingly. So what is the standard general approach? So this is going to be from your perspective of the battle, and usually this is a good one, especially in the best of 1 setting, or if you are approaching an unfamiliar matchup for most of the time. This is the main way I usually approach team preview. So the first thing to start off with your general approach is going to be identify the 6 Pokemon on your opponent's team, which is pretty obvious. You have to look at your opponent's Pokemon and you're going to have to look at them. That's what team preview is. And then what I like to do is create a blueprint of your opponent's team in your mind. So what I like to do is, in my mind, I'm looking at the 6 Pokemon and I'm trying to figure out how it works. I'm trying to figure out what potential items that they could have, what kind of sets, such as the EV spreads and moves, if they have it. Like, for instance, do they have a fire move on one of the Pokemon, since they don't have a fire type potentially on their team? Maybe they have a fire move on one Pokemon so they can handle Ferrothorn, for instance. And then I look at what kind of strategy and forms of speed control they have. For instance, is there a way of winning getting a Trick Room? Is there a way of winning setting up with a certain Pokemon, like maybe a Pokemon that has like Belly Drum or Dragon Dance, for instance? And I also want to figure out like what kind of forms of speed control they have, especially since that can be really big. Do they have options like Max Airstream? Do they have moves such as Thunder Wave, Icy Wind that can maybe hurt my side of the field while being able to get themselves in a good position. I try to figure out how their team works exactly. So after I figure out a blueprint of my opponent's team in my head, I usually just identify the threatening Pokemon or combinations that can be tough for my team to handle, because obviously you want to try to pinpoint which exactly Pokemon you should try to figure out that your opponent most likely will bring and what Pokemon can give you a tough time, so you can plan accordingly to it. Try to assess the win conditions for your opponent. I think this is something that's big. Usually some players will just try to assess their own win conditions, but I feel like both is you try to figure out your opponent's as well as figure out yours, because what you want to really do in this is you want to figure out how can you win the game, how can you lose the game, and how your opponent can win and lose as well, because there's also that level of depth. Because you can figure out your win conditions, but really knowing how you will lose a game is super important, because you could try to prevent those situations during the game itself. Try to identify which Pokemon will most likely Dynamax, and I feel like this is something really important to 2020, is you want to figure out what are the most possible Dynamax users on the team. For instance, a Pokemon such as like Dusclops will most likely not Dynamax, because Violet Dusclops isn't going to be a Pokemon that Dynamaxes most in the games, but maybe something like a Sweeper that has weakness policy. For instance, like a Dragapult is more likely to Dynamax if they do have it. So you want to try to figure out what kind of Pokemon that can Dynamax on their team, so you can figure out the different possibilities of how the game can go. Then finally, pick a lead and back Pokemon that will build up to your win condition or win conditions, while trying to deny your opponent's win conditions. So basically what you want to do is you want to have multiple win conditions, I feel like, in general, because you shouldn't be satisfied with just one. You could have a main one if it looks really tempting, for instance, like a weakness policy setup sweep, for instance, which could be a good win condition if it's really strong, especially if the Pokemon that is Dynamaxing is going to be really good against your opponent's team. However, you want to figure out maybe a backup win condition just in case, and you want to know multiple of them, because in case they counter plan the win condition that you have, you want to make sure you have backups to handle it, because of course your opponent's thinking of the same thing, right? So you got to figure out how you win, but you also got to understand how you lose as well, especially when it's coming down to the Pokemon you bring. Because if you try to prepare for something, for instance, that's such a big threat, but your opponent predicts that and is trying to go for like something that will handle your lead to try to build up for their win condition by preserving it, then it's something that you have to really consider, and you got to make sure you have possibilities, especially for switch-ins into those threats as well. So that's something that's really important, especially is just like figuring out how you lose, because if you understand how you lose, you can try to deny that as much as possible while trying to build up for one of your win conditions as well. So I'll give a general approach example. This is actually one of my tournament matches that I had in an online tournament known as Coastal League, and this was between myself and Alex Gomez, a really strong player from Spain. So if you don't know, this match was pretty important, because whoever won was able to get into the final bracket. So this was an important match, and yeah, so we were able to switch teams up, and the team that I used was on the right, the team that Alex used was on the left. And if you want to see the match to get even more perspective, like how the matchup would go, I'll put them in the link in the description down below. But basically how I approach this is by looking at my team and then looking at my opponent's team. So Alex brought Mimikyu, Togekiss, Rotomosh, Aegislash, Dragapult, and Incineroar. My team is Dusclops, Tyranitar, Togekiss, Arcanine, Milotic, and Ferrothorn. So what I noticed is that Alex has been running a triple ghost team, and this triple ghost team was very common back in the series 2. We were currently playing, I believe, in series 3 when we were playing this tournament, and this was a very popular Japanese team, and I know Alex did use it at a regional and did get top 8, I believe, with it. So I knew some familiarities, but of course he could have changed sets, so that is something I had to be aware of. So what I noticed in team preview, of course, was the triple ghost, and usually with triple ghost, it's going to be weakness policy Dragapult most of the time, and you would have to assume that both Mimikyu and Aegislash do carry Shadow Sneak. So a Pokemon that could most likely Dynamax in this game is going to be most likely the Dragapult. I could pretty much exclude Dynamax Aegislash unless under certain extreme circumstances, because of the fact that Aegislash isn't just really a good Dynamax Pokemon. The Dragapult most likely was always going to be carrying weakness policy on this team. Mimikyu could potentially be holding a life orb. It could also be running a lumber or safety goggles, and could potentially have trick room. The Rotom Wash, since there's a Togekiss, most likely that Togekiss has Follow Me. So the Rotom Wash could be a setup with Nasty Plot, which is what I'm pretty much going to assume there. And also, since there is a Togekiss with Follow Me support, I'm assuming that the Dragapult could also have Dragon Dance, maybe over Protect. The Togekiss most likely is going to be a Follow Me set. It could be offensive with Scope Lens as a Follow Me user, or it could be defensive with like a Safety Goggles or a Berry. Maybe carries Yawn. Maybe could carry a Fire move, because this team was really weak to Ferrothorn potentially, because Ferrothorn was something that was getting pretty popular recently, especially Iron Defense Ferrothorn, which he doesn't have many answers to. And then the Incineroar, I'm assuming, is going to be a standard set. The item, it could be maybe Assault Vest, for instance. I assume it's probably like a standard Incineroar set that most players run with, like Parting Shot, Fake Out, Flare Blitz, and a Dark type move. Maybe it has a berry, a Recovery Berry, or maybe it has the goggles itself. I assume pretty much that Aegislash would probably be carrying the Focus Sash, since most Aegislashes during the time did run Focus Sash. It was their most common item. So that was basically the blueprint of what I understood from this team. The win conditions from Alex, there were a few, mainly that if it was Swords Dance Mimikyu, if he was able to get rid of Ferrothorn, it could have been troublesome. If it was a Nasty Plot Rotom, that's really good against my team, so I'm going to need to keep Ferrothorn around to deal with the Rotom. And the Dragapult, of course, with the Shadow Sneak Weakness Policy combination, was going to be a little bit scary to handle. So I had to prep for a potential Rotom Wash, dealing with it. Dealing with Mimikyu effectively, as well as the Dragapult, which were very scary. So how I approach this is going to be from game 1 of our set. So the lead I decided to go, it was a very comfort lead. It was going to be Dusclops plus Milotic, because the reason I chose Dusclops plus Milotic here is because I'm an expert belt on Milotic. I'm actually pretty offensive on my team. So I'm going to be able to go for a max Hailstorm if the Dragapult decides to Dynamax and go for an attack, because most Dragapult attacks like a max Phantasm, because my opponent can't really touch the Dusclops unless the Mimikyu has Taunt. But if they Taunt, that's completely fine. The reason is because in order to knock out Dusclops, they have to go for a Dynamax move with Dragapult, for instance. And if they go for the Dynamax move with Dragapult and Max Phantasm, it's going to lower the defense on my Milotic, but that activates the ability Competitive. So what I'd be able to do is get a +2 Milotic with Dynamax and potentially trade my Dusclops for their Dragapult, which is amazing for me. If they lead something like a Rotom, because Rotom Wash is, again, really good against my team, I don't think it's that bad. If it's Nasty Plot on Rotom, I do have Haze on my Dusclops, so I can set up Trick Room and just go for Haze while trying to get damage with Milotic. A Thunderbolt won't do too much as long as I keep Milotic decently healthy, especially with the option that I had for Recover. And I had an Assault Vest Ferrothorn I could always switch into. So I decided just leading Dusclops plus Milotic was very safe, because it covered for the Dragapult option right away. And it covered the Weakness Policy Dragapult option, and yeah, if they did lead something like a Rotom trying to set up, I always could just go back into Ferrothorn, because they didn't really pressure my Dusclops without leading something like a double Ghost lead, for instance. So Dusclops would pretty much be able to survive multiple combinations, get Trick Room, and I could always switch into Ferrothorn in the case of like a Rotom Wash passive lead trying to set up Nasty Plot. And Milotic, again, pressured the offensive mode with the double Ghost. And the last Pokemon that I decided to bring was going to be Tyranitar, because of the fact that Tyranitar was really good against Alex's teams. There's only one Rock Resist on Alex's team, which is the Aegislash, but however, that Aegislash is also weak to Dark. So my Tyranitar, especially if it's able to get a Weakness Policy boost, which my Tyranitar was Weakness Policy, it would be able to immensely threaten most of Alex's team if I was able to get it under Trick Room. So that was another win condition that I decided to bring, because Tyranitar in general was just super good against Alex. So that's how I approached the game 1 lead. If you would like to see again that set, you could go check it out. So next we have the opposing perspective approach. This is from you taking your opponent's side and trying to look at how they would approach your team and then trying to counter it. So it's very commonly used in game 2 or 3 situations, or when you're facing an opponent who you've already encountered before. Maybe if you play someone for a lot. For instance, I play Eduardo Cunha a bunch, a really top player from Portugal. who I practice with a lot. So if we ever played a tournament, such as like the Players Cup, for instance, we play a lot differently than maybe how the standard matchup will go, is because we're always trying to mind game because we know how each other plays. So this is why you try to take the opposing perspective approach, is because sometimes it is going to be a mind game, because it does come down to mind games and conditioning depending on situations. And that's something that is a lot to explain about. So I'm actually going to be linking a YouTube video. It was made for Smash players, but the concepts are pretty much the same, and I think it's a super well done video. So make sure you go check it out. It's by My Smash Corner, and I'll leave a link to it in the description down below, because you can get an understanding of like how complicated like countering leads, for instance, could be, or countering options based on two players going head to head in a battle of the wits. You could try to analyze from your opponent's perspective. That's basically what this entire perspective goes down to. And then you decide leads based on predicting your opponent's lead and then countering that lead. This is really hard to do at times because there are obviously so many possibilities and you can't always predict your opponent 100% correctly. So this isn't going to be something that's really approachable from someone who's getting new to the game. So I'd highly recommend, if you're trying to get started, use the general approach for most of the time, even in game 2 or 3 situations. And then when you start getting used to team preview, then you start using this opposing perspective approach, especially if you face someone that you've known for a long time, or maybe it's like a matchup and you kind of can anticipate what they're going to do next. So that's when you use this method. So the game I will analyze is another tournament match I had. This was in the Players Cup Invitational Game 2 against Wolf Glick in the winners semis. So this team was something that I previously encountered a lot, actually, in Series 3 when it first came out, and I had a pretty similar team to the one I was using when I was playing that matchup on the Showdown ladder a bunch of times. So I kind of understood how this team played. I have played against Wolf several times actually in the 2019 season. I didn't play him in the 2020 season before this, but I was pretty confident in my approach. So if you want the full details of the set, you could obviously check it out in the link in the description down below, because you might have to watch game 1 to understand why I decided to go with this. So, but I will explain it here anyway. But if you want more of the context, you could always go check it out by watching the set. So in the game 1, I was able to win by using Excadrill Togekiss very effectively, because Wolf's lead was very passive against Excadrill plus Togekiss. I was able to set up a Sword Stance and just be able to out-pressure him pretty much with a late game Dragapult. So he ended up leading the NDD plus Snorlax, which just allowed me to get a Sword Stance up and just able to do too much damage to him, where he couldn't really get Trick Room or any kind of control. So I felt like in this game, I pretty much knew what he was going to bring. I knew he wouldn't lead the NDD and the Snorlax once again, because it just wouldn't really work out for him. It just is a pretty poor lead, I feel like, especially if I just lead the Togekiss plus Excadrill, which I already proved was a massive threat to him. So I was like, okay, what does he decide to bring? I don't think he's going to bring passive again, because if I go with the Sword Stance Excadrill once again, Sword Stance Excadrill is just going to be able to set up and just do too much damage. So they don't really lead Hatterene against Excadrill plus Togekiss, because the Hatterene is just really threatened by the Excadrill, for instance, especially if I Quake or even Steel Spike can threaten it if I predict maybe the NDD not to follow me that turn. So I pretty much rule out those options. The Venusaur I pretty much rule out because there is no Sun support, so it really isn't going to be putting on too much pressure against me. So I'm like, okay, what are his options? I don't think he's going to lead Ribombee plus the Snorlax, because of course Togekiss follow me kind of denies that strategy regardless. So I'm like, okay, his last options are probably going to be the Dusclops plus Snorlax. The reason he would probably lead Dusclops plus Snorlax is because if I lead Excadrill plus Togekiss, he doesn't really, I don't have a way that can shut down the Dusclops unless I decide to go for the Air Slash Flinch, which is possible, but it's not exactly a reliable win con, especially since I'm Super Luck Togekiss. I only have a 30% chance, so that isn't reliable. So it seems like a really good lead overall against me, because I can't really threaten this combination right away. I can't stop him from setting up Belly Drum and the Trick Room at the same time, unless I double up the Snorlax with like maybe Air Slash plus Max Quake, but that uses my Dynamax really early and he still gets Trick Room up. So I'm like, okay, that's not exactly good for me, especially since my team's pretty weak to Trick Room. I'm like, okay, he's probably going to lead Dusclops plus Snorlax because of those factors where I can't really stop Trick Room from going up unless I go for luck, which isn't exactly the best option that I have. So what can exactly threaten that combination? And I'm like, okay, I could probably lead Dragapult plus Excadrill because the way I do the most damage to Dusclops on my team is going to be through Life Orb Max Ghost from the Dragapult. So I'm like, okay, I could lead the Dragapult plus Excadrill. I think it's very solid. We both knew each other's teams, so I did know that he had Ally Switch on the Dusclops. So I was like, okay, since I know he has Ally Switch on Dusclops, it's very, very, very possible he just goes for Ally Switch turn 1. Because if I do go for Max Phantasm Earthquake into Dusclops as he Trick Rooms, he just loses because Snorlax will take too much damage from Earthquake. I still have my Dynamax Pokemon, and I'm able to deny any Trick Room or Speed Control the Snorlax has. So it won't be able to do as much. So that was basically how I decided to plan out that combination, because I felt like his Dusclops plus Snorlax had the correct option there because of the fact, again, it did shut down my Excadrill plus Togekiss, and then also it had the Ally Switch potential in case I did lead Dragapult plus Excadrill. But since I didn't know he had Ally Switch, I could always plan ahead and go for that double up into the Dusclops and try to call for an Ally Switch, because if I am up a game, I can risk it. And if I do lead just Excadrill Togekiss, I just lose here, and there's not really another lead combination I would really want other than maybe Dragapult plus Excadrill or Togekiss plus Excadrill. And if I can't lead Togekiss plus Excadrill, I'm gonna lead Excadrill plus Dragapult to put on the offensive pressure against the Dusclops. So that is how I decided to approach this match from game 2. Again, if you want more context about the set and want to see how it went, I will link it in the description down below. But yeah, there's not really too much about team preview, so I'll just give some last minute tips and advice for anyone who is struggling with it, because I get asked this question again a lot. If you are up a game, do not change up your lead for the sake of changing / shaking things up. I have gotten this response so many times, so many unnecessary changes / shaking things up where it costs a player a game because they decide to change it just for the sake of changing it up, because they think, oh, their opponent's gonna like go hard counter their game 1 lead, and then what happens is that they ended up losing the game 2, and then game 3 the opponent gets a lock on how the opponent plays, or they go back to the original game 1 lead, and then they just get counter lead for game 3, and it just ends up being a mess. So do not do that if you're up a game 1 lead just for the sake of it. Try to think about it logically, as you should for most things. If you are down a game, consider between each game whether the problem was with what you brought or the way you played in the previous game. And I feel like this is something that's not really talked about, and I really do want to stress this point, is that you brought 4 Pokemon, right? Maybe you brought a lead and then 2 Pokemon in the back, and you know you lost that game, but you don't know what to do, so you start panicking. The thing is, you got to make sure to consider is you can win a game with the same lead as well as a Pokemon in the back potentially, and you got to try to understand if it was with the actual Pokemon you brought, maybe it could have been a problem, but you also have to consider that it could have been just the way you played that game. Maybe you didn't play it as well, maybe there were some luck factors involved, and maybe those had an impact in the game. So it might seem okay, but you might be discouraged by the fact that you lost the game anyway. So just try to consider between each game during the next team preview is like, was it really the Pokemon I brought was wrong, or consider maybe there were some luck factors, or maybe there was ways I could play better. Because I have been in many game situations personally where I lost a game, but it wasn't due to the Pokemon that I decided to bring, or it was my back Pokemon that had a problem. It was just the way I played. I didn't exactly play it the best, and I put myself in poor positions. So then you can use the next team preview. You could bring the same Pokemon, and then you just try to figure out, okay, how do I change what happened from the first game, and how can I play better to put myself in a better spot using the tools that I have. So the last point I really want to stress is the same lead is acceptable even if you won or lost the previous game. And I think this is something that is very important here, is that again, if you're up a game, the same lead can do well. Maybe your opponent prepares for it, but if it's just a solid lead in general, like, it might still be fine just to go with it, because you just have so many options, for instance, maybe with that lead, or maybe like their team can't cover it as well, but they kind of have an idea. But you could still win as long as you play better, of course. Even if you lost the previous game, the same lead can still be acceptable. I think I stressed this out in bullet point 2, but really just it comes down to how you played or what kind of factors happened in the previous game, and then afterward you want to try to play better, maybe try a different approach to it using the same lead, or you can go with a different lead. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I've seen so many players just be discouraged by leading the same thing every single game. And you know what, it's not really just by your lead, it's how you use that lead and use the tools in the back to your advantage. And that's something to stress. Like, if you are comfortable with the lead in the back Pokemon you brought, you just try to figure out something different that you could do during the actual game instead of just focusing on just like what Pokemon do you bring in general. So something that I do a lot is I try to bring a lead combination that is great against most possibilities that your opponent has. And if you have a potential poor lead, have a Pokemon that you can switch into to put yourself into a positive or at least a neutral position. So one lead can deal a lot against most of your opponent's team. For instance, like the Togekiss extra X control combination against Wolf was really good against most potential lead options he had. And I felt like if I was put in a negative position, I could always just like switch out in order to gain a better spot. And this is usually how I like to approach my games in general, especially when I decide on a lead, is mainly just pick two Pokemon that are really good or at least neutral against most of what combinations my opponent can bring as a lead. And then for the four things that can put me on the back end immediately, I can at least maybe like have a switch in the back so I can reset the board to where I don't lose too much, and maybe I can even put myself back into a neutral or even a positive spot depending on this. For instance, this was shown in my game against Poke Alex, the example that I used earlier. Like, my Lodic plus Dusclops was really good against the stuff that threatened my Dusclops, and then if they decide to lead the Rotom Wash, I always had the potential just to reset and switch out in the Ferrothorn and put myself back in an advantageous spot. And I feel like that's something that's just really solid in general, and I feel like that's usually the way you want to approach team preview for the most part, especially your leads. I think the best leads are the ones that are generally good against your opponent's team, but have the options to switch in to another Pokemon in the back and put yourself into, again, back into neutral or back into an advantageous spot. Team preview is mainly about being able to process information at a fast pace. Practice analyzing teams constantly until it becomes secondhand nature. So I feel like this is the thing that most players will struggle about team preview. They kind of don't know where to look exactly, and they just look at the 6 Pokemon and then they just like, oh, I'm gonna bring this, I'm gonna bring this, I'm gonna bring this, and I'm gonna bring this. And they don't really process, they can't really process all the information at once. They can't really like say, okay, they have this, they could have a potential, I don't know, trick room, for instance. They have like tailwind support. What kind of items do they have? They don't really try to like look at all that, and they just decide to pick the Pokemon. And I feel like most players, especially at a top level or high enough level, will be able to understand this information instantly or pretty fast. It's mainly just a habit that most players will pick up. The more you do team preview, the more exercises you do, the more you analyze teams, I feel like the better you get at the team preview process. So I think it's just a matter of repetition, as well as just like understanding where to analyze. So if you're having troubles, I would recommend just watching, for instance, YouTube videos or streams or just matches in general, maybe like, or maybe some tournament matches, and then you pause the video or stream on the team preview, and then you just look at the opponent's team and like how you would approach it if you were on the player side. And I think that's really something good to know. Even if it takes you maybe 10 minutes to get all the information you want, then you just keep doing it over and over and over until it becomes just like a secondhand nature. You try to speed up the process, and that's basically how you get better team preview. I don't think it's like anything that it's something anyone can do. It just comes down to how much experience a player has at analyzing teams and being able to process the information fast enough. So if you are struggling, my greatest tip is just to keep practicing this, keep analyzing these situations, and figuring out your win conditions as well as your opponents is going to be the key factors, I think, in order to improve at handling team preview. And that is going to be the end of my video on how to handle team preview or how to approach it. I hope this video has helped anyone who is currently struggling with. I feel like it is pretty straightforward. I only gave maybe a few tips of how I personally approach it and some of the key stresses that I usually have about team preview, as well as the misconceptions at times. But that is generally how I approach it, and I feel like it's not exactly a super big topic. There's not much I have to talk about team preview, as all the concepts are pretty straightforward. There might be a little bit of in-depth stuff, but really it's just about analyzing and just the ability to process information. So if you want to get better at team preview, I highly recommend just doing exercises. Watch those videos, watch those streams of matches, and pause them and then analyze the teams that could possibly be there, as well as the matchups, and then you try to play from the player's perspective, for instance. And you could also do it for the opposing side as well, if what they would bring and maybe predict right or wrong, for instance. So yeah, I hope that you found this video helpful. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like down below. It really does help out my channel. You could also hit that subscribe button with the bell notification if you want to see more videos like that. Feel free to leave a comment down below, especially if you have any tips for other players. Maybe there's something I didn't mention in this video that could have been mentioned. Let me know in the comments down below. If you have any questions, you can feel free to join my community Discord, where I do interact with the chat, and we have a bunch of VGC help, for instance, and I do answer questions there. So if you do want to ask questions, you could always hop into the community Discord, and if not, you could always go to my Twitch channel where I do live stream VGC, and you can always ask there, as I generally answer questions in the chat as well. So come hang out and have a fun time as well. And yeah, you could also check out my other stuff, such as my back-to-back battles videos. Of course, if you're new to my channel and you discovered this video and want to learn how to approach team preview, I have a bunch of videos of just like playing and analyzing teams from my file process. So yeah, feel free to go check it out. Otherwise, that's going to be it for me. Have a great day, people, and until we bow again, I'll catch y'all later.